Hey guys, how are you? I'm hopping on for the webinar. I'm going to wait just a couple of minutes and see if some people hop on. Even if nobody hops on, I'm going to record this so that I can share it out. But I'm going to wait just a couple of minutes to get started, just to give people time to get on if they want to. So if you're hopping on a little bit early, we're going to wait a couple of minutes and then we'll get going. All right, I see a few people hopping on. If you will, regardless of how you're watching this, if you're watching it on Facebook or if you're watching it on YouTube, if you have a place to leave comments, will you just leave a comment and tell me, just say hi, introduce yourself, maybe tell where you're from. That would be awesome. Just as we wait a couple more minutes for people to hop on, that'll give you something to do, right? So just in the comments, tell me your name, maybe where you're from, anything you'd like to know tonight. I did read lots of the questions and lots of the things that you guys shared on the Google form, which was awesome. And we're going to cover so many of those things tonight. And it's going to be fast and furious. I know you guys have a lot to do. So just really quickly, if somebody will leave a comment, just so I can make sure I'm receiving the comments, that would be awesome. Okay, some of you may not be able to leave comments because of where you're watching from. We're going to go ahead and get started just because I want to make sure that we end on time. And I also want to make sure that I'm able to get everything in that I wanted to share. So first of all, I'm Andy McNair, and I am so excited to be able to share with you just some of the things that I've been thinking through and working through. I want to start by saying, this is a really difficult time. I'm a mom of a senior. We have 3 kids here at our house. We have a senior, a sophomore, and a 7th grader. And this has been really, really difficult, not having school, going to school every day, a part of our lives. And so my kids are actually starting to say things like, I kind of miss school, or I miss my teachers. I'm ready to go back, which is crazy. But it just goes to show how much of a part of their life school is and how difficult this can be. All right, I see you guys, I see your comments, and I see some familiar faces. So that's exciting. Hey, Holly, Corey Camp, hello, Cam, Jeanette, and I would try to say, is it Eucharist? I know I probably butchered that, but hello, I'm so glad that you're here. Okay. As we kind of get started, I just want to say, if you're like me, I just took my 87th walk today. I'm just kidding, but I have walked a lot. I go on so many walks each day just to get out of the house. I am learning how to cook. Who would have thought Andy McNair would actually, I made a homemade pie yesterday, y'all. Chocolate pie from scratch. I made the actual pie crust from scratch and the meringue. I was like, who am I right now? I don't even know what's happening, but I'm learning lots of new things. My kids are learning lots of new things. And I really want to focus tonight on those connections and how important those are. So before we really go any further, I want to make sure that we set the tone and say, before I say anything else, that regardless of how we do remote learning right now, I'll settle in a minute. Live videos make me super nervous, but I'll be okay. It still has to be meaningful, right? So it's really important that we hold on to that right now, because regardless of if your district or if you as an educator are having to send home packets, or if you are doing everything digitally, it still has to be meaningful. You know, one of the things that I say all the time is, if what we're doing in the classroom isn't meaningful for our learners, it's a waste of our time and theirs. Well, the same still holds true right now. If what we are giving them, if what we are giving them for their remote learning, if it's not meaningful, it's a waste of their time and ours. And we don't want to do that right now. I think it's also really important to acknowledge that this is a very difficult time, right? Our kids are not at home just for the sake of being at home. They're at home during a time where there's a lot of anxiety, there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of uncertainty. And I think we have to keep that in mind. So expecting every student to do the same thing at the same time is just not a reality right now because of the different situations that we're all in. You know, you think about our kids. We have kids who are at home with both parents, maybe super supportive parents who have them on a schedule. We have kids who are home alone all day with no parents because maybe both of them are essential workers. Or we have parents, like my situation is that my husband is not home. He goes to work. I'm home all day, but my reality is that I work at ESC Region 12 as a digital innovation specialist. And so I'm working all day. And so finding that balance and figuring things out is not easy. And I think we have to keep that in mind when we're considering what remote learning is going to look like. A couple more things I want to say before we get into the practical things. I promise we're going to get there, and I have so many things to share that you will be able to implement immediately. I hope that it's going to be really helpful. I want to say that I definitely do not have all of the answers. I don't think anybody does right now. We're in such a weird time. I think we're all just trying to figure it out. And that's okay. Like whatever you're doing right now, I want to first of all acknowledge that it's enough. We're just all trying to figure this out together. And as we're doing that, we're learning, and we're learning more every single day and every single week. But we're going to make mistakes. There's going to be things that we do that we're like, oh, why did I do that? Or that was a terrible idea. And that is okay. So I think we have a choice here, right? To see this as an obstacle or as an opportunity. And it's very important that we acknowledge, first of all, I want to say that I think this is for sure an obstacle, right? None of us would be here by choice, but we find ourselves here. And so if we can shift our perspective a little bit and choose to see it as an opportunity for our students to make connections in a way that they've never been able to make connections before, I think we'll be able to move the needle forward a little bit. And by that, I just mean that when this is all over, we're going to be able to see education from, I think, 3 different perspectives. What it looked like before the pandemic, what it looked like during, and then what it will look like after this. And so making that choice to see this as an opportunity versus always seeing it as an obstacle, I think can really be a game changer and help us shift our perspective to really creating the change that has needed to happen for a while. And that's not a bad thing. I just think it's something that we need to consider. So one of the things that I really want to focus on this evening is designing experiences, and not just designing experiences, but meaningful experiences. Now, I know that some of you may be thinking right now, Andy, I'm not trying to design experiences right now. I'm just trying to survive. I'm just trying to get through day to day. And that is okay. But what I want you to understand is that designing experience is not that difficult. It is simply a shift in your mindset and understanding that an experience leaves an impression. That's all it means. So if you're planning lessons for your students or you are giving them activities, if in your mind, when you're designing the things that you're going to send for them or you're going to share with them each week, if you will shift that thinking to an experience, that can be enough to change everything, because an experience leaves an impression. I always say, and I know some of you have heard me say it 100 times, but an activity is just something that someone or a group does. Who cares if they do it, right? But an experience is something that they do that leaves an impression. So tonight, that's what we're going to focus on. How can I design experiences, meaningful experiences that I can give to my students that will help them make those important connections that we need them to make? So I'm really excited about sharing this. I hope that it will make sense. I hope that it'll give you some practical things. We're going to go through several things at first, and then I'm going to, at the end, my Texas accent came out a little bit. At the end, I'm going to share with you several different things that you can use in addition to designing these experiences. Okay, so as we go through, we're going to focus on the 3 E's. And I've shared these out a lot this week because this is something that I talked about before this ever happened when I helped educators design experiences in their classroom. So I always have suggested that you engage your students as soon as they come into the classroom, that you design an experience that they are willing to invest in, and you empower them to use that beyond the walls of the classroom. So when this kind of started happening, I started thinking in my head, I started kind of thinking like, what would this look like if we used the 3 E's to design remote learning experiences. And I'll be honest, it took me a while to get to a place where it made sense for me. I didn't share this out for a long time because I just couldn't figure out how to do it in a way that made sense. But finally, I think I thought it out enough to realize that there really is a connection here between that engage, experience, and empower and remote learning. So I'm going to share with you the graphic. Some of you have probably seen it this week. Some of you may not have seen it, but this is the graphic that I shared out this week on social media. And so I want to just kind of introduce this, and let's take a second to look at it. And then I'm going to take you through kind of the website, how you can use the website with several other resources. All right. So the first piece is engaging them. So this is designed to be a weekly learning experience. Here's what I think is dangerous about doing daily learning experiences. Asking our students to do something every single day right now could be really difficult just because of, like we talked about earlier, that difference in their situations, right? We don't know what's happening. So giving flexibility, giving choice, all of those things are so important right now. And so this model really gives you that opportunity to do just that. So I think when we think about engaging our students, we hear that word a lot, right? They have to be engaged. Engagement is important. Engage, it comes out all the time. But I think what we really want to consider here is, what does that mean, right? Because we can say the word all we want, but if we don't get to what it means, then it's a waste. For me, I think engage is really getting them to that willingness to invest. How do you get your students to that place to where they want to learn? And if you have middle high school students, you may be thinking, oh my gosh, I have no idea how to do that, or they're never going to get there. I think that it is difficult for sure. But that willingness to invest is what sparks that flame so that learning can continue to occur. So when we think about that, there's several different things we can do. And one of the things that I want to point out here is that this model is not meant to be like, check, check, check. I always say that about so many things that I share, because I'm not a big fan of like, here's exactly how you should do that, because everybody is different. All of our learners are different. And so we have to consider that. These are just ideas. So in the engage piece, could you share a video? Could you ask a question or share a photo? I love the spoiler alert idea, right? Like showing you doing something where you're using that skill and seeing if they can guess what that skill is, and then creating curiosity. Those are all, I think, really great ways to get your students to engage. And one of the things that I want to share here is creating that curiosity. Curiosity can drive learning. It's a really, really powerful force, but sometimes it's a hard thing to ignite. And I think we do that through getting them to ask questions, right? Getting them to wonder, because if we can get them to ask questions and get them to wonder what they're going to be learning about, they will stay engaged because they'll be looking for the answers to their questions. They have more ownership in it. So while these may not be the ideas you want to use, you may know of another way. You know your students better than anyone. So you may know of a different way that you can get them to that willingness to invest. The next piece is the experience. And we're going to go through each one of these. So hang on. I'm just kind of giving the overview right now. Experience is just the opportunity to learn. So after you get them to that place to where they're really wondering, or they've seen the video and they're like, what is that? Or what are we going to be doing? Then you can give them the experience. Here is where they're actually going to learn, or they're actually going to experience the learning. There's a lot of conversation right now happening around, is this the time for new learning? And that's hard, because I think right now it's hard to introduce new learning because of our students. And just like I've said 3 times now, they're different situations, right? Some have access to parents who are able to teach and work with them, but many of them do not. So it's important to consider that. But you could do so many things here. Have them read to learn, the maker experience, have them make, create, design something, teaching them through video. Direct teach is still very powerful. One thing I would say here is that videos should probably not be more than 5 or 6 minutes, and that's max. Remember, these guys have an attention span of 8 seconds. Asking them to watch a lengthy video is just not going to be realistic. Doing a guided scavenger hunt, a collection of learning opportunities, those are some ways that you can design the experience piece. And then the empower, this is the best part, y'all. This is where they make the connection. So this is where they actually take what they've learned and they connect it to something at home. This is huge, because if we can get them to take the things that they have learned this year at school, or the things that we need them to understand, and they can actually apply it, or they can do something with it, now we're getting into that designing for depth, right? Now they're not just regurgitating it on a worksheet, but they're actually making those meaningful connections, and that's huge. So this empower piece is all about that. So having them go on a connection scavenger hunt where they look for things that connect to what they've just learned, giving them a photo challenge, so showing them a picture and letting them connect that to what they've learned, the protege effect, them teaching each other, giving a reflection opportunity, and then the creativity connection. And we're going to talk about that as well. So that's just kind of the overview of the 3 pieces and what they mean. And each piece is really important, but you could see how if you were just doing this over the course of a week, how your students would have some flexibility. And it would make a little more sense, I think, than trying to do this checklist thing that is really difficult for them to do during this time, just because we're not at home just for the sake of being at home. We're at home during a really difficult time and everybody's trying to figure it out. Okay, so that is kind of the overview. What I want to show you now is the website that I created to go along with this. I just needed it to make sense for me, and I wanted it to make sense for anybody else who wanted to use this. So I'm going to go to the bit.ly. It's just bit.ly/DMLE. That stands for Designing Meaningful Learning Experiences 2020. And then I'm going to share my screen with you guys so y'all can see kind of what's going on. Okay, let's see if I can make this work. Okay, actually, there we go. So if you take a look at the website, this is the website. It's on that card. You can find it super easy to use, super easy to find. And I hope that this makes sense to everybody else as much as it makes sense to me. This is what the resource looks like. I've included the card here. And then when you go down, I'm going to make sure that you guys can see what I'm seeing. Yes. When you go down, you will see a planning resource. Now, this is just for you to use if you need something like this. I don't know if it's something that you're looking for. It's just a way to kind of think through, educators to think through, and a way to communicate with the parents what this weekly experience can look like. So I just kind of broke down the pieces: engage, experience, empower. And one of the things that I'm hearing a lot of is the use of paper. And if you're having to do non-digital, making those packets can be a lot of work. And so creating a one-pager like this, where you focus on connections rather than all of these different concepts and all of these different worksheets that they have to do, I think this could be super helpful. So when you click here on this planning resource template, it will give you a copy of these slides so that you can use them and you can add whatever you want to those boxes. Hopefully that's easy. So I've actually created one for elementary, and it's addressed to the parents. And then there's also one that is addressed for students. So if you have high school students or middle school students that you want to kind of give this information directly to them, there's also that on there as well. As you scroll down, so that's something you can use. You don't have to. It's just there if you want to use it. I know that for me, sometimes I just need something to walk me through. One of the questions that people have been asking me often right now is, hey, what does this happen? How does this work for a high school student or a middle school student that has several different teachers? Right now, collaboration is really, really important. It is important that we collaborate as educators and we consider making things cross-curricular. right? I mean, I don't think it's okay to give kids 7 or 8 different experiences to complete during a week. That's a lot of work. And we have an opportunity here to help them see how our different courses and different things that they do really can connect and don't have to operate in silos. So I think that's definitely something to consider. As I scroll down, I've just kind of walked you through each one of these pieces. So just the ideas that I've shared, but I think my suggestion is to just use this as a springboard. So these are just a few ideas, but there are so many more. And I want to share some specific tools with you that you can access for sure. And that we're going to talk a lot about flipgrid, because I'm going to show you how to set this up in a way that it can kind of run itself, and you can spend your time helping your students make connections and having conversations. Writing prompts on tumblr.com, such a great resource to screenshot some of those writing prompts and share them with your students. It will definitely get some conversation going. When we get into the experience piece, so the whole reading to learn, this could also work in curiosity as well. One of the resources that I want to share with you really quickly is Wonderopolis. And I know some of you are like, I swear she talks about Wonderopolis all the time. I do, but I do it for a reason. Wonderopolis looks like this. Let me make sure you guys can see it. Yes. If you've used Wonderopolis before, really quickly and I see Jessica's here. There's people that I know. And so I know y'all have heard me talk about Wonderopolis 100 times, and I'm sorry, but it's too great not to share. So they post a wonder every day. Today's wonder is, what is boba tea? There's my Texas accent. They can also search any wonder that they want. So I don't have to do the wonder of the day. You could go find a specific wonder related to what you need them to learn that week and use that as the curiosity piece, right? Or use that as the read to learn piece. So let's say I want to do, how does technology change lives? Here's what I want to show you here. Obviously, they can read the article. I know so many of you already know that. Lots of vocabulary practice here, reading comprehension. And then this has never been more important. Now there is this try it out piece at the bottom of Wonderopolis. Now that you've read it, here's what you can go do with it. And that's powerful, because that's making a connection to what they have just read and what they've just learned. So the last thing I want to show you here about Wonderopolis is immersive reader. One of the questions that's being asked a lot right now is, how do I help my students who are struggling readers or who need those extra things that I'm not able to give them right now? Immersive reader is such a great answer for that. When I get onto immersive reader, it takes away, I've showed this to so many people lately that I have everything turned on. So I can actually listen to it and have it read aloud.
How has technology changed lives? Have you ever wondered?
I can also go over here and I can add a colored background. Think about your dyslexia students who need specific fonts. I can increase spacing. I can also identify the parts of speech. I can break the words into syllables. I'm telling you guys, if you don't get excited about this, I say it all the time. If this doesn't make you super stoked about what we're able to do right now, I don't have a whole lot to offer, because this is amazing and it's so accessible. We're going to talk about some non-techie options for those students that don't have access, but this is something that they can do on their mobile device, right? So definitely something to consider. For English language learners, there's a picture dictionary. So if I click technology, if I'm not sure what that word is, it'll give me a picture, and it will also translate that into any language. So very, very cool. You guys in the comments, tell me kind of what you think about Wonderopolis. And if you've used Wonderopolis before, what's your favorite part? What's something you really like? I know that some of you have used it before. So I see some people jumping in and saying, hi, I'm so excited that you guys are all here. It's very exciting to connect. So in the comments, you guys tell me, what do you love about Wonderopolis? I think it's a little bit delayed, but that's okay. I see some local people too, which is exciting. It is an awesome resource and completely free, and you don't even have to worry about ads or anything like that. Such a great way to kind of stoke that curiosity fire and get them excited about what they're going to learn, and such a great resource because it has immersive reader built into it. Okay, I get so excited because I think it's just so cool that we're able to do some of these things for our learners. Okay, so going back into, I'm going to go back into my, trying to remember all of these links is fun. I'm going to go back into my original bit.ly so that I can kind of walk you through a couple of other things that I want to make sure that you see. Okay, so Wonderopolis, Dogo News, Newsy LA, you've probably heard of a lot of those. Dogo News might be a new one for some of you guys. Dogo News is a great resource for those students who are elementary students who need current events. I seriously need a Dr. Pepper. But when you think about high school students, Newsy LA, that's perfect for upper elementary, middle school, high school students for sure. Going through here, one of the things that I want to make sure I mention is creating a flip hunt. If you haven't heard of a flip hunt, it's doing a scavenger hunt on Flipgrid. I think it's a great idea to do a guided scavenger hunt so that students are actually doing things around their home to learn the content. So show me a video of you using measuring cups in the kitchen. Show me a video of you building a catapult out of sticks if you're maybe teaching physics. Those types of things so that they are having to show you and provide evidence of what they know. Again, Flipgrid can be used on any mobile device, so they don't have to have a computer. They don't have to have a Chromebook. They could do that on their phones, super easy to use. And we are going to spend some time looking at Flipgrid. But if you want to learn more about flip hunts, you just click on that link and it'll take you straight to Kathy's website. And she, I think, created flip hunts and shares so many great ideas. Creating hyperdocs. If you haven't heard of hyperdocs, that's a great way for your students to learn to create that, set it up, and then it's almost like a choice board, right? Where they can go in and they can click on the different links and see the things that you shared. But what you'll notice is in each one of these pieces, there are digital ideas and there are non-digital ideas. So I try to do some no tech, low tech, and high tech options because I know that's what we're dealing with right now. Some of your kids have access to a lot of technology. Some of your kids have access to no technology. And it's very important that we consider that and think about that as we design these experiences. And then finally, getting down to empower, again, doing a connection scavenger hunt with flip hunt, and then there's some other things that can do as well. Book creator and Scratch. I think one of the conversations right now is, well, I don't really want to give my students something new to learn as far as technology goes. I would just say to that, give them Scratch. They'll figure it out before we ever could. I know that my own students could use Scratch so well, and I still cannot create a video game on Scratch if I had to. Okay, so those are the three pieces. Do you guys have any questions before we get into how you could set this up each week and kind of get into the nuts and bolts of it? Do you guys have any questions about the engage, experience, or empower pieces? I'm going to check the comments really quickly. Yolanda, hey, how are you? And I love that it offers opportunities for differentiation as well. That is so important right now that we don't miss that opportunity for, that we can use to differentiate still, even when our students aren't with us. I love that as well. The immersive reader feature is huge, and I can't wait to show you guys that in Flipgrid as well. Jessica said she gets the wonder of the day emailed, but the new immersive reader feature is the best. I could not agree more. I am a huge fan. I think it's so cool just how accessible it is. Okay, so I don't see any questions about the 3 E's. So engaging them, getting them to that willingness to learn, that willingness to invest. Experience is where they actually learn whatever it is or review whatever it is that you're wanting them to see. And then the empower piece is where they make those connections. Leanne, are you wanting the address to the actual, let me put it in here real quick. Okay, it's in the comments, hopefully. Okay, so as we kind of continue on, I'm going to share with you guys how you could set this up in Flipgrid. And so this is going to be, I think, something that makes a lot of sense because, again, remember, they can access Flipgrid from their mobile device. They don't have to have a computer, a PC, or a Chromebook, or a MacBook, or anything like that. If you're like, oh, now I have to start using Flipgrid. I was using Google Classroom. You could set this up in Google Classroom as well. I just did it before I hopped on here to make sure it could be done. So let me kind of show you. I think that right now, as conversations are starting to continue and we're continuing to think about what this might look like, documentation of learning is going to be important, right? How are we going to show what our students are doing, what they're learning, what connections are being made? There's going to have to, at some point, be documentation of that. And I think Flipgrid is a great place for that to happen. Now, I'm going to go into Flipgrid, and I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about, and hopefully this will make a little more sense. So let me go here. And I'm going to go to Flipgrid. Sorry for all of the screen sharing, and it gets a little confusing. I know you guys can't see my screen yet. I'll get there. Hold on. Okay, so I am in my Flipgrid account right now, and so I'm going to share my screen so you guys can see. This is what Flipgrid looks like. And if you've never seen it before, gosh, it's just such a great way for your students to communicate via video. So if I had to sum Flipgrid up in one sentence, I would say it gives students an opportunity to have their voice heard. It engages, it empowers, and you can design your experience right here within this one tool. So I actually set up an example of a grid. And so if I was doing this for remote learning, I would set a grid up for each week. So there are two things you can do in Flipgrid. You can create a grid, and then you can create topics within your grid. So you would have week 1, week 2, week 3. Those would be your grids. But your topics on each grid would be engage, experience, and empower. And when you go in to create a topic, so here's my engage topic, you have the option to decide how long your students are able to record. You can give a prompt, so you would give them exactly what you want them to do, be very clear, very specific. You could record a video from yourself so that they can see your face and hear you sharing with them what you need them to do on this piece. And you can also add tips. So here's a topic tip. Here's something cool or short and sweet that I want to share with you. Then you can add topic attachments. Now, this is very cool because I can now attach up to 9 different resources for them to explore. So whatever that engage piece is, that willingness, where you're getting them to that willingness to invest, you could give them options here, right? Here are 9 different things. Let's say you're getting them to explore about volcanoes. You could put a YouTube video about volcanoes. You could put a 360 image here for them to explore. You might have there are just so many things. You might have a Wonderopolis article about volcanoes, whatever you want to put here. And then you may say, hey, pick any 3 or pick any 2, but this is your engage piece. So you have the option to add a topic resource. That could be the video from you. And then again, you can add those topic resources so that you can give them some options. So you guys in the comments, tell me real quickly, are y'all good? Am I going too fast? Or is everybody hanging in? I'm going to wait just a second and check on you guys. I just want to make sure we're all good and this is making sense. Sometimes I talk for a while and I'm like, are words coming out as sentences or is this making sense to people? I'm going to wait just a couple of minutes. I'm checking the comments. I love seeing these familiar faces. So fun. Okay, I may just have to assume that this is making sense, and I hope it is. Okay, I'm going to keep on trucking, and you guys feel free to. Okay, Leanne says all good. Thank you, Leanne. For sure. As you go through Flipgrid, you have so many different options of how you set this up. You could do it in a way that makes sense for your students. But that being said, you can see that I actually created, let me see if I can go back. So each one, engage, experience, and empower. And it could be consistent so that your students are always seeing this same grid each week. They'll get used to what it looks like. They'll see your face and they'll be able to respond. One of the other things that I really love about Flipgrid is that it gives you the opportunity to help your students have some time to think about their response. I think that connecting with them on Zoom or connecting with them on, Google Meet, those are all great opportunities, and they're important for that real-time conversation to take place. But when it actually connects to the learning, I think it's important to use something like Flipgrid so that they have time to think. They have time to consider their response before they put it out there. The same thing happens in a thing like Zoom or Google Meet that happens in the classroom. The kids who are going to answer quickly are going to be your confident learners. They're going to be your kids who are like, call on me, call on me. And that's great, but you want to give everyone that opportunity to respond. And so Flipgrid does just that, because they'll be able to share their response after they've had time to think about what you're asking them to do and explore those resources that you may share as topic attachments. So setting it up in Flipgrid, very cool, very easy to do. And Flipgrid also, let me show you one more thing. Flipgrid also has immersive reader. So if I went in here and I looked at, I don't know if it's going to show it to us, but we'll see. This is what your students would actually see. So if you had words in here, if you had written directions, you see right here, that same little icon that we saw in Wonderopolis, that means that they can click that and it will open up Immersive Reader. So it will read it out loud to them. They can use a picture dictionary. They can translate it, whatever they need to do. Just a side note, one of the is to be able to connect with parents. So I think it'd be a great idea to create a help grid, kind of like a help desk. But so many parents have questions right now, especially if you're using digital tools, because they're wanting to know, how do I do this tool, or how do we log in, or whatever. So creating a help grid on Flipgrid would actually give them a place to go put those questions. And it would also crowdsource them so that if they wanted to see if their question had already been answered, they could go do that. So you could create one grid, call it your district's help grid, and you could have the different tools listed. Here are the questions for Flipgrid. Here are the questions for Google Classroom. Here are whatever the questions are that you're getting asked the most. That is a great place to kind of put those resources as well. Flipgrid is a one-stop shop. I'm telling you guys, I am such a huge fan just because, first of all, Immersive Reader is in there, but also just how powerful it is. I think it's just a great way to connect with your learners. Okay, so that being said, creating a place, so you could do this same thing in Google Classroom, right? You could go into your stream, go into your classwork, and you could each week create 3 different assignments. So I would create topics. So in Google Classroom, you can add topics, and your topics would be your weeks, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Within each one of those topics, you would have 3 assignments: engage, experience, and encounter. And then your students would know that's where they go to find their work, and that's also where they would post the documentation of their learning. So either way, whether you use Flipgrid, which is kind of my favorite, or you use Google Classroom, whatever makes sense for you. Don't try to jump into something totally new right now. That's a terrible idea. But finding a way that makes sense for you and your learners is a really good idea, and I think something that will be beneficial. So are there any questions on setting the experience up in any of these tools? I have terrible wait time. I'm just going to say that. I'm like, okay, moving on. All right, I am going to move on, but if you guys have questions, feel free to put them in the chat and I will make sure that I see them. And if I don't, I'll make sure that I get to them at some point. All right, so ticking right along, let me go back because I want to make sure that I show you everything in here before I move on and show you some of the other really cool stuff that I'm excited about. again, this is the website. Let me make sure you guys can see it, and you can't. There we go. As I scroll down and I get past the documentation of learning, I do plan on adding this evening how you can do this in Google Classroom. And again, if you registered for this webinar, you're going to get all of this content. I'll email you all of the links so you have it all. These are just some additional thoughts that I had. I wanted to make sure that we kind of thought through this. Somebody has already pointed this out. Because you're giving students ownership and choice as you design these experiences, there's going to be some level of natural differentiation, which is a great thing. That's something we need to make a priority right now. I work a lot, I'm a gifted specialist at the ESC Region 12 as well. And so thinking about our struggling learners, but also thinking about our gifted learners and our high achievers who need that little something extra. I think one of the things that I really want to point out about this 3E model, and I'll point it out again at the end, is that it's really powerful because this is something that you could turn around and use in your classroom when you go back. So remember, we talked about that past, present, future. This is something that you could use as a daily model, right? Every day, and that's what I used to talk about the 3 E's before this all happened, is every day engaging your students as soon as they walk in the door, designing an experience that they're willing to invest in, and then empowering them to make those connections beyond the walls of the classroom. So if you use this model or you use something similar to this, then you stick with that when they come back to class. It's not like a huge shock or something totally new that they're having to learn. It just kind of flows nicely. And I really, really like that. I think it's important to provide choice by giving your students options. Don't always decide what's appropriate. Let them give you feedback on, hey, that didn't really get us to the willingness to invest. We like that you think that it did. It didn't. And then listen to them and be able to pivot and make changes. That word is huge right now. Like, all right, have you guys ever seen Friends? I'm asking that. I'm sure you have. But I love that episode where they're carrying the couch up the stairs and they're like, pivot. That is exactly, I feel like, what's happening right now. Like, this is not working. This is not, I think that's really something that we have to consider is how are we going to pivot? How are we going to make those changes when we realize what we're doing isn't as effective as we had hoped it would be? Making it a priority to weave in life-ready skills and social emotional learning right now. I don't know if you guys have seen the videos on Facebook of the kids who are posting and just really struggling right now. They're really not okay. It is important that we check in with them, and it's important that we weave social emotional things into what we're designing. And this opens the door for that. I'm just going to be honest, a worksheet doesn't. But this type of learning where it's an experience and they're making those connections, you could really think through, hey, how can I weave in a little communication, a little creativity, critical thinking, reflection, all those things that we've always talked about. Now, how can I weave that in so that it's part of my experience? It's not something separate. I don't have to do a totally different thing. I'm just weaving it into what I already do. And then I think also thinking through social emotional and really understanding, how can I weave that in? How can I give my students opportunities to be self-aware? How can I help them work on their relationship skills right now? What does that look like? And again, how can it be woven into the experience versus being something separate? I think a couple of the other things we'll talk about at the end as well, but I do want to make sure that, you know, we just make it very clear. They're not at home. They are at home with all of that fear, anxiety, and uncertainty. And so taking time for ourselves, it's important because we're in that same boat. One of the conversations that I had today with some teachers was that, you know, your self-care and your social emotional wellness is just as important as your students. So it's important for you to take care of you as well, and giving yourself and your learners grace. I know that you guys are hearing that so much from amazing people like Brad Johnson on Twitter. He is killing it right now with the things he's saying. I am definitely on his bandwagon. But I think that giving grace and understanding that we're going to make mistakes right now. We don't all have all of the answers. We're just all sharing, hey, here's an idea. Here's something we think might work. And that's what's going to happen right now. So that grace is really, really important for yourself, for your students, for your colleagues, all of those things. Okay, that being said, that is the resource itself. And hopefully those 3 E's make sense. But what I want to do for the last few minutes of the webinar is I want to show you some additional resources that you can use in addition to this. So there's a couple of different ways you could do this. You could find where you want it to fit into the engage, experience, and empower pieces, or you could use this as the enrichment. So when you look up here on the planning part, I did decide to add an enrichment piece for those students who need something extra. I've talked to many teachers who have said, you know, my parents are emailing and asking for more, or they're wanting something extra for them to work on. So I wanted to make sure that I shared some resources with you guys that you could put in the enrichment category that's not going to be more work for you. I think that's the other thing right now is that workload. If you have kids at home that you're trying to teach yourself, and you're trying to teach a group of 25 kids, or if you're a high school teacher, hundreds of kids, anything that is kind of created and you can just use right away, I think is helpful. So I'm going to show you guys really quickly a couple of different things. It's not a secret. I'm a big fan of Genius Hour. If you haven't heard of Genius Hour, it is an opportunity for students to actually learn based on their passions. And so I've really been thinking a lot about what Genius Hour might look. I hate seeing myself on video. It's like, who is that? I don't look like that. And listening to your voice, like, who talks like that? I don't have an accent. But I think thinking through what Genius Hour might look like at home. So I just created this resource and I walk students. This is created for students. I walk students through the process of Genius Hour. So each one of the 6 P's, figuring out their passion. I almost wore that sweater tonight. I'm glad I didn't, because then I would have been wearing the same thing in both videos. That would have been bad. Passion, plan, pitch, and then project, product, and presentation. And so all of the resources are here for them. And then if you click on teacher information, it tells you as a teacher how they can kind of document their learning and what that can look like. So Genius Hour at home is a great enrichment option for your students for sure. I think it's a great way for them to make connections to the content by pursuing their passions. And look, they need to feel in control of something right now. They need to feel like there is something that they have control over. And I think Genius Hour gives them that. What change can you create? What impact can you make based on what you're passionate about? And that's what that website walks them through and teaches them how to do. So definitely something that you might want to check out. One of the things that I shared really early on was the remote learning slides. And so I want to show you this as well. These are just easy to use. You don't have to do anything at all. Let me show you what this looks like. It's going to ask you to make a copy of the document. That's just so the slides will be yours and we won't all be editing the same slides. And that's important. I did not expect I didn't know how helpful these would be. But I have gotten so many emails from so many teachers who said this has been their answer to parents who wanted more, and has also been their answer to just being able to start somewhere. So when you make a copy, it'll pull up slides for each day of the week. So there is Maker Monday, Techie Tuesday, Wonder Wednesday, because I love Wonderopolis, Thinking Thursday, a little critical thinking in their lives, never hurt anybody, and then Free Friday, where they just make their own connections. So you can kind of see how this works. There are QR codes, or they can just click on the link. You could be creative and think about what this might look like without technology. There are ways to do that for sure. But I wanted to make sure that I got these out there and made them available. So you'll just make a copy and then you can share that same link with your students. They can make their own copy and use that. And they can just each time, right, make a duplicate. So regardless of how many weeks we're in this, they can they can just keep duplicating. And then when they come back, they'll have documentation of all of their learning, right? Ding, ding, ding. Definitely a winner, I think. Really easy to use. So what do you guys think so far about Genius Hour at Home and the remote learning slides? Are those things that you feel like you could use at least for enrichment? What are you guys thinking? Tell me real quick in the comments if you are able. I think it takes just a minute for the comments to come through on my end. I don't think I see them immediately. So you guys comment, I'll go ahead and keep moving, and then I'll respond definitely for sure if anybody has any questions or anything you want to share. Okay, I know you're still there. I can see how many people are watching. So definitely leave your comments if you're able. Okay, that being said, so we've got a Genius Hour at Home. We talked about the remote learning slides. Thank you, Horacio. Again, I probably butchered your name, but I tried, right? I think that the next thing that I wanted to share, oh, Yolanda, I'm so excited. She said she shared this with teachers and they are loving it. That makes me happy. The other thing that I want to share, remember I shared Wonderopolis with you. Check this out. And I know some of you already know about these, but just pretend like you don't. Wonderopolis slides, they look like this. And you can make a copy. And this is where students can actually document the wonders that they explore. So if this is something you want them to do on Wednesdays, they can do Wonder Wednesdays, whatever. But again, these are just slides that they go in and they document their learning. Here are 2 new words that I've learned. Here's something else that I've learned from this wonder. Just a really cool way for your kids to simply document their learning and share what they did, so that they're not just saying, oh yeah, I did Wonderopolis. That ain't gonna work. I need documentation of the learning. So they would put their wonder title and then they would document the learning that happens there as well. And then finally, the last resource that I want to share with you guys was made specifically for parents. And I made this because I was actually doing a webinar for TAGT, which if you don't know, that's the Texas Association for Gifted and Talented Learners. And I wanted to make sure that I had something for parents to access if they needed. So this is something you might want to share with your parents. You definitely don't have to. But this is just a website along with webinar. I put the video here. It looks terrible, but when you click play, it does its thing. And then these are just some ways that they can make connections, right? Going for a walk and looking for geometry, cooking a meal together and talking about fractions, thinking about high school students, thinking about the different things that they can connect to, whether it be physics or algebra or all of those things that they've always said, when am I going to use this? Well, now's a great time for them to figure that out and you to be able to help them do that. Let me show you what that looks like. This is what that website actually looks like for you guys. So here's the video. And then as you scroll down, here are the different suggestions for parents to make connections. Here are some resources for them to use for curiosity, creativity, and then Genius Hour at Home. So lots of different things for them to explore as parents and use. Oh, look, I accidentally stopped on Genius Hour. What a coincidence. So I think that all of those resources, really, if I'm honest with you guys, I just created those out of a need to do something, because I don't know how to help and I don't know how to make it better and I don't know how to fix everything. But I just want to provide resources that make sense and that may make this time a little bit easier for you guys as teachers. I want to make sure that I reserve the last few minutes to answer questions. So as you guys think of your questions, because I know you're going to post them, don't leave yet, because I want to make sure that you know how you're going to receive all of the information and all of the things that I've shared tonight. But if you have any questions, go ahead and post those in the chat. I hope that this has given you practical ideas of how you can use those 3 E's to design a simple weekly experience that will help students make those deep connections. I think the key right now is being intentional and purposeful, right? And to understand, like I said at the beginning, it still has to be meaningful. If it is not meaningful, if we're just doing it because, hey, we were told to send some work home, or I'm just checking off a box, We are wasting their time and ours. And now is not a good time to be doing that. So it's so important that we really are intentional and purposeful about considering, is this an experience? Is it going to leave an impression on my learners? And if it's going to, then go for it. But if it's not, it's important to pull back and just think about, what can I sprinkle in? Do I need an engage piece? Do I need an experience piece? But that empower piece is so important, because that is when they make the connections. That is when they're actually going to take what they've learned, or take whatever it is that you are reviewing or reminding them of, and make those connections so that there is meaning. That's where the meaningfulness comes in, I think, is when they are able to make those connections. So I hope that all of those resources have been very helpful. I'm checking the comments. I guess you guys don't have any questions, which is fine. But I want you to know that I'm definitely here and I want to help. As somebody who often travels and talks to teachers and gets to just collaborate and communicate with teachers all of the time, this is really, really difficult. Because I want to be with you guys and I want to be talking and sharing, and I get so excited about what we can do for our learners. One more thing that I do want to share that I think I forgot to mention is that on the planning form for the 3E, there is a place for digital and non-digital. So it's okay to have a mix of those things. It's okay for it to all be digital or all be non-digital. That's just up to you what that looks like. I just wanted to make sure that everybody had it worked for the situation that you're in. So as I kind of wrap up, I just want to say I really suck at saying bye. I just miss adult conversation. So and when I'm done here, I have to go cook, which I'm not real happy about. It's 9 o'clock, but that's how we roll at the McNair house right now. It's so funny. My kids are starting to say, they'll come into the living room every night and they're like, what's for dinner? And I'll tell them. And then they're like, what's for dessert? I'm like, what? Who am I? Like, this is not a restaurant. But I actually have made dinner and dessert every night. So I worry about when this is over and we have to get back to our real lives. My kids are going to be in for a rude awakening, but seeing it as an opportunity versus an obstacle, I think is powerful right now. So I just appreciate you guys so much. Jessica, you're so sweet. I think you guys are the rock stars. I'll start crying if I talk too much, but I just want to say what you're doing is enough. You guys are amazing. I am so thankful for the work that you're doing and the work that we will continue to do as educators to move that needle forward when this is all over. I love you guys. I appreciate so much of what you do and what you're going to continue to do. I appreciate you being here. I'm going to hang around a few seconds if you want to put, or a few minutes. If you want to put your questions in the comments, I'll be sure to answer those. But if you need to hop off, feel free to do so. Thank you so much. Okay, I'm looking at some questions. Would you keep using one method or would you switch around? I'm presently using HyperDocs for student lessons, but yeah, Yolanda, I think it's okay. I think it's okay to switch. I just think it's okay to commit pretty soon. So like if you're going to use flipgrid, I think it's okay to do that. Just kind of make it an easy transition, make sure everybody understands why you're switching and that this is what you're going to be using from now on. I think it's okay to switch once or maybe twice. We just don't want to switch every week probably because that's going to get frustrating. But yes, that's a great question. It was so good to see all of you guys. You take care as well. Leanne, thank you. Thank you for all of your work for sure. I appreciate it. Yolanda, you're so sweet. I'm so glad you were here. I'm still here. So if you guys have questions or anything, feel free to post them. I'm going to hang out for just a couple of minutes. Anything to avoid being in the kitchen again. I think the comments, like I said, are taking a little while to come in. So I will, after I end this, I'll make sure that I go through and check the comments. And if there was something I needed to respond to and I didn't, I'll definitely try to do that. But I am going to log off soon. But it was so great to connect with you all and learn with you. It's been awesome. So I'm going to do more of these webinars. So if you want to stay connected, I'll make sure that I share those on Twitter. I'll share them out with my email list. These are going to happen a little more often, even though they make me super uncomfortable. I am gonna do this. Yes, the video will be available as well. That's a great question. I will send the video out to my email list as well as make it available on the website. So this it can kind of be the training video for the 3 E's, and it'll be on the DMLE Designing Menu 2020 website. So that bit.ly that I shared. All right, I'm going to hop off. If you guys need anything else, please feel free to reach out. Oh, don't leave yet. Let me put my Twitter handle up. And I'd also had my contact information. So if you want to take a picture of this, you are welcome to do that. So let me share my screen real quickly. And here we go. Okay. So there's my contact information if you guys want to reach out. The first one is Twitter. The second one is Voxer if you want to connect. It's a walkie-talkie on your phone. If you don't use Voxer, you definitely should. It is the best way for me to communicate. My Voxer handle is just Andy McNair, and you can always reach out to me via email at mcnairandy@gmail.com. Gosh, I almost forgot to share that. See, there was a reason I was hanging around. All right, seriously, it's 9 o'clock. I'm going to get off of here so you guys can get some rest. Get some rest and reach out if you need anything at all.